I can't think of anything more important than the effort to bolster the culture of adoption and fostering of vulnerable children in our society. I come at this from the direction of an eternally grateful adoptive mom. My husband and I have a little girl, our 5th child, whom we adopted from China. I don't exaggerate when I say that she is the light of our lives. Now, when we talk about culture, I think it's very useful to remember that culture is downstream of philosophy. Whatever we believe about something, about its purpose, its intended end, then our laws and regulations and the whole shape of our culture are going to reflect those beliefs. As a society, as you all know, we're experiencing a conflict over the regulations and laws that pertain to adoption and foster care, and many activists are trying hard to drive out much needed and very successful faith-based agencies from the public square. This conflict, I believe, comes from a clash over the philosophy undergirding adoption. And it's a fight which is just too significant to allow to fall into the usual right versus left talking points which make up so much of our discourse. It's too significant because the issue is the welfare of children. We waited 20 months for our little girl from the time we applied to the time she was assigned to us by the Chinese government. During those long months, I spent way too many hours on the internet preparing for the event by haunting internet chat rooms and adoption-related blogs. My husband and I were parents by biology many times over, but this was a whole new world. I learned a lot about attachment and the need for patience and understanding of my little girl's life experience, which up to then had been very grim, and it hadn't prepared her for a big, affectionate family. But the web's adoption community chatter wasn't all about process and practicalities. There was also a lot about the philosophy of adoption. It turns out there are 2 distinct camps. In one camp, the emphasis is on the prospective parents, who are generally unable to procreate biologically and have a strong, understandable desire for a child. The baby or child is a priceless vehicle of fulfillment for these parents. This group uses the secular psychological language of self-realization and self-actualization, and the new parents consider themselves the primary beneficiaries of a limited commodity, usually healthy abandoned children. In the other camp are those who see adoption as the rescue of a child. You could call this altruistic adoption. In this reading, the person of primary concern is the orphaned or unwanted child, and the crisis is not infertility, but a child's urgent need to be delivered from loneliness by a forever family. In the case of the United States, also the urgent need of a pregnant woman considering abortion to have a better choice than death for a child that she feels that she can't care for. This group tends to be religious and uses the language of faith to talk about adoption. These 2 different approaches to the process become a much larger issue when you move from the internet chat rooms and onto adoption policy. If, as in the first reading, the focus is on what childless adults want, then the emphasis is on the rights and equal treatment of adults. When the spotlight shines instead on the needs of the child, then the rights of a vulnerable child to the most nurturing and stable family possible become paramount. For a faith-based adoption agency to accept only married opposite-sex couples as prospective parents looks like an injustice when viewed through the parental rights prism. An unmarried couple, a married same-sex couple, or a single man or woman would seem to have the same rights to an orphaned or abandoned child. This is why Massachusetts, San Francisco, DC, and Illinois pass laws barring sexual orientation discrimination. Faith-based agencies in those locations, which for many decades have specialized in difficult placements, including abused children and those with special needs, were forced to shut down their adoption services. They simply did not consider adoption a service to meet the needs or desires of adults, but an act of mercy for desolate children. The faith-based agencies understand that these children, especially those with disabilities and those who have survived the trauma of abandonment and the loneliness of an orphanage, need and deserve both a mother and a father who are in a stable, committed marriage. Hoping to preserve the agencies that help so many hard-to-place children, several states, including recently Oklahoma, have passed laws allowing them to preserve their policies in the name of religious freedom. The states are being challenged by the ACLU because to them, the good of the neediest of children is nothing when placed in the balance against the desires of adults. Now, I've known what it is to ache for a child, and I don't want to minimize the longing of same-sex couples for sons and daughters. These are deeply personal matters involving painful situations and intimate desires. But I think that we can all agree that more choices are better. Let's agree to not force faith-based providers out of adoption and foster care. If you're a same-sex couple, don't go to Catholic charities, but don't seek to shut Catholic charities down. There are other providers who can help you become parents, and think how wonderful it is when children who need homes have more agencies ready to go to bat for them. 10 years later, our adopted daughter, who was abandoned on the street at birth and spent many months being neglected in a crowded orphanage, is flourishing in our cheerful home. She is the perfect sign to me of the absolute beauty of every little soul, wanted or unwanted, convenient or inconvenient, and the blessedness that comes to both sides of the adoption miracle. Thank you.
Blow me a kiss.